At 78 years old, Cher has finally given the world an answer that nobody saw coming. It isn't about infidelity rumors, creative disputes, or financial disputes, nor is it about Hollywood politics or tabloid scandals. It's an entirely different truth, a revelation so raw and honest it permanently changes our understanding of one of music's most famous duos. For decades, the public assumed they knew the story behind Sonny and Cher's breakup. But Cher's admission takes us behind the curtain into a hidden struggle that no chart success or variety show could disguise. When Sherilyn Sarkeesian first met Sonny Bono in 1962, she was an unknown folk singer, while he was a behind-the-scenes songwriter and record producer. Their chemistry ignited immediately. Sonny saw her haunting voice as the missing piece to his dream project, and she glimpsed in him the promise of partnership on stage, and perhaps in life. They married within months, and by 1965, I Got You Babe topped the charts, propelling them from folk clubs to sold-out arenas practically overnight. Their whirlwind romance became part of their mystique, with fans swooning at televised performances and craving the next hit. By the mid-1960s, Sonny and Cher were household names. They dazzled audiences on the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour with witty banter and coordinated outfits that became pop culture touchstones. Every Saturday night, families tuned in to watch their easy laughter and onstage flirtation. But behind the scenes, a quieter tension was growing. Where cameras captured unified smiles and synchronized vocals, backstage conversations often ended in friction over musical direction and creative control. Cher's dreams of experimenting with new sounds clashed with Sonny's efforts to preserve the tried-and-true formula that had launched their success. Touring ramped up the pressure. Endless cross-country drives, cramped dressing rooms, and consecutive late-night gigs left little room for rest or for resolving underlying resentments. Cher wanted to branch out, to write personal songs and explore edgier styles, but Sonny held the reins tightly, insisting that every lyric, chord change, and costume choice remain within their established brand. Their contrasting work styles, her spontaneous bursts of inspiration versus his meticulous production methods, exacerbated every small disagreement until it began to bleed into nearly every shared moment. Then came personal tragedy. In 1969, they endured the heartbreaking stillbirth of their son, Chaz. Grief swallowed them both, yet they processed it in isolation. On stage, they painted over real pain with bright smiles for fans. Offstage, they retreated into separate silences, unwilling or unable to bridge the gap between shared heartbreak and the public spotlight. That loss seeded a loneliness within their marriage that no amount of applause or television ratings could heal. By 1970, Cher's ambition had outgrown the duet. She sensed a growing impatience. The late-night songwriting sessions no longer felt like collaboration, but like negotiations over territory. With every chart-topping single, she felt her own artistic identity slipping behind Sonny's vision for the duo. The ledger sheets and royalty statements reflected success, but her soul craved autonomy. Cher began privately writing songs that Sonny found too unconventional. He, in turn, argued that such material threatened the commercial stability they'd built together. Money disputes deepened the rift. As their paychecks swelled, so did the scrutiny from managers and lawyers. Cher proposed signing a solo deal or taking an acting role that could elevate her public persona, even if it meant diluting the duo's brand. Sonny balked, insisting that every venture outside their partnership posed a risk to everything they'd worked for. Meetings that should have been business as usual turned into battlegrounds of ego and fear, each side convinced that the other was willing to sacrifice their shared legacy for personal gain. Meanwhile, the wider cultural revolution pulled them in opposite directions. Cher embraced the era's liberated ethos, unleashing bold fashion statements and voicing progressive political views that resonated with younger fans. Sonny, more conservative by nature, bristled at radical protest themes creeping into their act. What once united them in folk-pop solidarity now became a battleground of ideals, each performance a subtle referendum on whose vision would prevail. Amidst these spiraling pressures, Cher's confidence soared. Solo gigs in Las Vegas and rising critical acclaim for her individual style convinced her that she could thrive on her own. When gypsies, tramps, and thieves blasted through speaker systems, Packed audiences cheered her undeniable talent, proof she no longer needed a partner to shine. That pivotal moment crystallized her conviction. The time had come to step out of Sonny's shadow and redefine herself on her own terms. By early 1974, the inevitable happened. Sonny and Cher filed for divorce. The official papers cited irreconcilable differences, but they barely scratched the surface of a complex web of creative clashes, personal grief, and irrepressible ambition. Cher was just 28, yet she stood at a crossroads that would define her life's work for decades to come. Now, at 78, she has finally shared the actual reason she walked away. An explanation that reframes one of pop music's most legendary breakups and sheds light on the woman who refused to let fame silence her truth. The turning point came during the filming of their hit television special in 1973, when Cher found herself standing under blinding studio lights, the audience's cheers echoing around her even as an unsettling emptiness took hold. She wore a costume stitched from opal-toned sequins, her hair cascading in dramatic waves, yet inside, her heart felt unadorned and fragile. Each scripted laugh track and polished punchline underscored the reality that her true voice was being muted, suppressed in the very act of entertaining millions. Off camera, she began scribbling lyrics in her dressing room. Raw, unfiltered verses that bore the imprint of her own desires, fears, and unspoken grief. The fear of exposing that personal poetry became a weight she could no longer carry in tandem with Sonny's carefully curated image. That late night calls to her closest confidants revealed the widening chasm between on-screen persona and private longing. She spoke of feeling claustrophobic in the gilded cage of their brand, of yearning for a chance to step into the unknown without orchestrated safety nets. She remembered writing a haunting melody about loss and resilience while reclining on a tour bus bunk, the skid of tires lulling her into a fugue state where tears mingled with melody. It was her first truly self-authored song, one that Sonny dismissed as too somber, too intimate for the duet. The rejection stung like salt on a fresh wound, igniting a resolve she had not known she possessed. If her truth could not live within their partnership, she would set it free on its own. Her chance arrived when a boutique record label executive approached her with an offer to record a solo album, an opportunity laden with both risk and promise. Cher pored over the contract clauses, her pulse quickening at the prospect of artistic autonomy. She imagined stepping into the studio alone, guided only by her instincts and the echo of her own voice. Yet as she weighed the decision, she grappled with loyalty to Sonny, whose protective instincts bristled at the idea of her venturing out solo. He warned her that a misguided solo stint could unravel everything they had built together. But Cher knew in her bones that remaining tethered would cost her more than any potential fallout. It would cost her soul. The night she signed that contract, a hush fell over their shared home. Sonny returned from rehearsals to find the papers on their kitchen table, Cher's pen ink still drying. He looked at her with a mixture of confusion and pain. In that wordless exchange, the years of buried frustration and unvoiced ambition crystallized into a single, irrevocable moment. Cher felt tears of both grief and exhilaration slip down her cheeks. She was severing an unbreakable seeming bond, yet simultaneously forging a new path she could finally call her own. In spring of 1973, Cher entered the recording studio for the first time alone. The experience was electric and unnerving. The control room's glass partition felt like a confessional window, the microphone's capsule a vessel for her liberated spirit. She laid down tracks with raw emotion, her voice soaring over strings and piano, unguarded, unfiltered, pulsing with authenticity. Hours became days as she immersed herself in production choices, collaborating with jazz musicians, rock guitarists, and avant-garde arrangers. Every decision felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. As demo tapes circulated, industry buzz swelled. Critics hailed the sound as a daring departure, a metamorphosis that balanced commercial appeal with heartfelt introspection. Fans who had only known her as half of a duo now glimpsed an artist unafraid to grapple with complexity, the pangs of heartbreak, the ache of independence, the thrill of reinvention. Radio stations played her solo single Gypsies, Tramps and Thieves, and the public response was immediate and explosive. Crowds cheered when her name lit up marquees. Not just the second half of a famous pair, but an entity all her own. Sonny watched the ascent with mixed pride and lament. He congratulated her in public, but retreated to private confusion and resentment. The chemistry that once bound them on screen now sparked jealousies and insecurities off camera. Arguments, once fixable with a backstage embrace, grew so heated that crew members tiptoed around the dressing room. Cher stood her ground, reminding Sonny that her creative imperative could no longer be denied. He countered that success without unity felt hollow. Neither could fully convince the other. The gulf between freedom and partnership had become unbridgeable. By late 1973, Cher's solo album was poised to debut, and tabloids bristled with headlines speculating on the fate of Sonny and Cher. The tension reached its peak during their final joint performance at a Las Vegas showroom. Under dazzling lights and a chorus of camera shutters, they exchanged rehearsed smiles and practiced harmonies, yet the audience sensed a brittle undercurrent. When the curtain fell, they parted ways backstage without so much as a glance. The applause outside could not mask the solemn silence that followed. Divorce proceedings began in early 1974. Though the legal paperwork cited irreconcilable differences, Cher's mind replayed the countless whispered arguments about songs unsung, costumes unchosen, emotions unspoken. At 28, she walked away from the marriage that had defined both her public persona and private dreams. It was a choice fraught with fear of scandal, financial instability, and the unknown, but it was also infused with hope that she could finally inhabit her own narrative on her own terms. When the divorce was finalized, Cher found herself at a crossroads she had long prepared for. Instead of retreating from the spotlight, she stepped into it fully, armed with the lessons of love, loss, and the unyielding need for self-expression. Her debut solo tour sold out in record time, and the success reaffirmed her belief that authenticity, no matter how risky, would always find its audience. In choosing herself over the duet, Cher not only rewrote her career trajectory, she also redefined the meaning of artistic partnership. After stepping into the spotlight alone, Cher's career soared to unprecedented heights. Her debut solo single, Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves, climbed to #1 on the Billboard charts, shattering expectations and silencing critics who doubted she could shine outside the dynamic duo. The song's vivid storytelling, a young mother's defiance against betrayal, resonated deeply, mirroring Cher's own journey from duet to independence. Night after night, she gripped microphones in Las Vegas showrooms packed with adoring fans who cheered not just for her voice, but for her courage. In those moments, the weight of a past partnership faded beneath the roar of ovation. Emboldened by commercial triumph, Cher broadened her artistic ambitions. She ventured into acting with a series of bold choices, a heartfelt turn-in comeback to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, and later her Oscar-winning performance as Loretta Castorini in Moonstruck. Each role revealed new facets of her talent, vulnerability beneath her signature confidence, warmth under her defiant exterior. On screen, she discovered an alchemy that blended her operatic contralto with nuanced character work, transforming her from pop star to respected actor. Hollywood lights and red carpet premieres replaced variety show spotlights, and the press clamored to chronicle her cinematic acclaim. Through the late 1970s and 1980s, Cher's public persona evolved continually. She embraced avant-garde fashion, partnering with designers who crafted iconic bodysuits studded with rhinestones and draped her in metallic capes. These fearless style statements became her trademark, earning her the moniker of pop culture's ultimate chameleon. With each new look, she proved that reinvention wasn't a one-time stunt, but a lifelong commitment. Fans tuned in as eagerly to her sartorial transformations as to her chart-topping singles, celebrating her refusal to be defined by any one era or genre. Meanwhile, Cher's personal life made headlines of its own. After divorcing Sonny, she married rock star Greg Allman in 1975, only to part ways 2 years later. The brief union and its tumultuous end became fodder for tabloids, yet Cher remained undeterred. She welcomed her son Chaz out of that relationship, facing the challenges of single motherhood under the unblinking glare of fame. Custody battles and public speculation tested her resilience. Yet she juggled late-night studio sessions, motherly duties, and performance tours with indomitable spirit, turning hardship into fuel for artistry. By the early 1990s, Cher experienced yet another career renaissance with the release of the dance-pop anthem Believe. The pioneering use of auto-tune created an electronic echo that propelled the track to global dominance. At 53, an age when many artists fade, Cher topped charts once more, becoming the oldest female solo artist to secure a #1 single in the United States. The success of Believe reaffirmed her uncanny instinct for reinvention. Here was a 78-year-old icon leaping ahead of the curve in technology and style. She followed with a sprawling world tour, selling out stadiums and earning praise for her boundless energy and showmanship. Despite a career spanning decades and crossing genres, Cher rarely revisited the full story of her divorce from Sonny, until very recently. Bits of her truth surfaced through breezy interviews and passing anecdotes, but the actual reason behind their split remained clouded by rumors of infidelity, power struggles, and the public grief of losing a child. Fans speculated endlessly. Was it betrayal? Creative clashes? A clash of personalities? None of these guesses captured the deeper currents that now surface in Cher's own words. Half a century later, as she approached her 70s, Cher began opening up more candidly about the emotional toll of suppressing her own voice in favor of a joint brand. She spoke of a sense of erasure, of waking up one morning feeling as though her identity had been swallowed by a partnership that no longer reflected her true self. The moment she recognized that compromise had turned to suffocation marked the real turning point. A realization she kept private for nearly 50 years. In recent interviews and in the pages of her memoir, Cher has finally revealed that the actual reason she divorced Sonny Bono wasn't rooted in scandal, but in self-preservation. She admits she feared disappearing entirely beneath the weight of their joint persona and understood that love sometimes requires the courage to walk away. By choosing solitude over submersion, she reclaimed the agency that fueled her creativity, laying the groundwork for a career that would defy every stereotype thrown her way. Reflecting now at 78, Cher regards that divorce not as a heartbreaking failure, but as an act of liberation. She credits the difficult decision with enabling her artistic evolution, from a chart-topping singer in matching outfits to an Oscar-winning actress, a trailblazer of electronic pop, and a symbol of reinvention. Though the world still marvels at her glittering gowns and powerhouse vocals, Cher's greatest triumph lies in the freedom she claimed by stepping away. After revealing for the first time the deep personal motivation behind her divorce at age 78, Cher sparked a global wave of empathy and understanding from fans who had only known fragments of her truth. Listeners perceived not a rehearsed celebrity statement, but the raw confession of a woman reclaiming her identity after decades performing in a duo that had become a gilded cage. She described how the partnership that once fueled her dreams eventually threatened to erase her voice, and how stepping away from the spotlight alongside Sonny had been an act of painful self-preservation. Now, as she reflects on that turning point, hers is a story of heartbreak transformed into creative liberation and enduring resilience. In recent interviews, Cher has admitted that at the heart of her decision lay a fear that her individuality would vanish into the collective brand she and Sonny had built. She spoke of waking one morning to find the lyrics she had penned the night before smeared with caramel and makeup, her handwritten verses lost among song lists approved by committee. That moment crystallized her dread. Endless compromise would smother the originality she prized more than chart position. Her voice, once wild and unfiltered, had become secondary to a packaged persona. To Cher, stepping away from Sonny was not an act of rebellion against love. It was a conscious choice to salvage her essence. That realization gave her the courage to embark on what she later called the most terrifying freedom of her life. She plunged into the unknown, signing contract after contract without knowing whether the world would embrace her as a solo artist. When Gypsies, Tramps, and Thieves rocketed to #1, it validated her risk, but the true victory ran deeper. The triumph lay in proving to herself that her convictions were worth more than any safe collaboration. Each success felt like a personal exhale, a release from the tension she had carried for years. Even now, Cher notes how every standing ovation for her solo work comes with a note of private vindication. The aftermath of her divorce also reshaped Cher's sense of collaboration and community. No longer constrained by an exclusively duet-focused worldview, she sought out creative partnerships that challenged and inspired her. Producers like Mark Taylor and Diane Warren introduced new sounds that merged rock, pop, and electronic elements, genres she might never have explored under the old formula. Songwriters handed her candid lyrics built around empowerment and self-discovery, themes that resonated personally after choosing freedom over comfort. These alliances showcased Cher's chameleon-like talent while honoring the fierce independence she had fought so hard to reclaim. Her evolution extended beyond studio walls into advocacy and activism. Having witnessed how her own voice had been sidelined, she became a champion for artists asserting creative control. She backed legislative efforts granting songwriters stronger rights over their compositions and supported campaigns demanding fair streaming royalties. On stage, she incorporated personal anecdotes about the music industry's pitfalls, turning sold-out arenas into forums where fans felt empowered to question the status quo. In interviews, she urged younger performers not to give up their artistic agency for a momentary payday, reminding them that longevity came from authenticity. As a trailblazer who defied expectations at every turn, Cher embraced later-life reinvention with the same gusto. At 53, she embraced auto-tune on Believe, using it not as a cheat, but as a creative tool to articulate emotion. That decision thrust her back to the top of the charts, proving that bold choices could transcend age and genre. In her 70s, she experimented with digital platforms, releasing NFTs tied to unreleased tracks and collaborating on immersive virtual reality performances. Each venture underscored the lesson learned in her marital split. Without courage to risk, no innovation can flourish. Equally important is the personal peace she found beyond celebrity. Cher speaks gratefully of the quiet decades after Sonny, marked by deep friendships, fulfilling relationships, and a family life that reflects her renewed priorities. She remarried briefly and embraced single parenthood, guiding her son Chaz through turbulent times and celebrating his own career, all while maintaining a sense of self she once feared lost. Today, her social media posts radiate genuine warmth, whether she's sharing a recipe, offering mental health encouragement, or showcasing a new art installation. That authenticity traces back to the moment she chose to honor her inner voice, even at the cost of a beloved partnership. When audiences now watch the iconic footage of Cher performing alongside Sonny on the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour, they do so with fresh awareness. Behind every witty retort and coordinated outfit lies the tension of two strong wills learning to coexist. Knowing the actual reason for their split transforms those clips from pure nostalgia into poignant reminders of the price of compromise. Cher's admission at 78 has given those historical moments a new dimension, inviting viewers to witness not only the spectacle of pop culture, but also the stirring arc of a woman who dared to reclaim her life. In the years since sharing the true catalyst for her split from Sonny, Cher has watched her story take on new power as both confession and inspiration. Fans who once focused solely on her glittering costumes or powerhouse vocals now find themselves drawn to a deeper narrative, that of a woman who reclaimed her voice under the weight of expectation. Across social media, countless messages arrive from listeners who see in Cher's journey a mirror for their own struggles, those who have felt silenced in relationships, careers, or family roles. From high school students daring to audition for the school play to seasoned professionals negotiating for a loftier title, her admission has sparked a wave of personal reckonings. In sharing her pain, she offered a salve, the message that authenticity demands courage, and that true success arises when we honor our own truths. That ripple effect has enriched Cher's purpose beyond entertainment. She now mentors emerging artists through her Cher Cares Foundation, offering grants to performers, regardless of genre, who demonstrate both talent and tenacity. The program pairs each recipient with a veteran advisor in music, film, or fashion, ensuring they receive guidance not just on craft, but on navigating the pressures that accompany limelight pursuits. Alumni of the initiative credit Cher's example for emboldening them to negotiate contracts on their own terms, speak openly about mental health, and prioritize creative integrity above fleeting trends. By investing directly in the next wave of artists, she is multiplying the impact of her own leap into independence. Parallel to mentorship, Cher has expanded her activism on behalf of women's rights. Recognizing how her decision to leave a marriage at its peak defied societal expectations, especially for a rising star. She now lends her voice to campaigns combating domestic coercion and championing legal reforms that protect spousal autonomy. She has testified before legislative bodies, sharing her experience as a high-profile case study in why women need unambiguous access to legal counsel and financial resources when divorcing. As a result, several states have introduced bills simplifying spousal settlement processes and increasing funding for support services. Cher's willingness to step into political arenas underscores a belief she often expresses that personal stories can become blueprints for systemic change. Musically, Cher continues to push boundaries. Her most recent album blends rock, electronica, and even orchestral flourishes, genres she once feared to explore in her partnership with Sonny. Critics praise the record not only for its genre-bending production, but for lyrics that probe themes of rebirth, sovereignty, and the delicate art of forgiveness. In live performances, she often dedicates numbers to the audience members who wrote her letters describing how her divorce revelation changed their own lives. Those soliloquies, spoken candidly between songs, have become as anticipated as the music itself, transforming her concerts into communal rituals where vulnerability and empowerment dance hand in hand. On screen, Cher has begun producing documentaries that delve into women's creative legacies. Her first project, Songbirds in Flight, chronicles female duos, from classic jazz partnerships to modern pop collaborations, exploring how shared success can sometimes eclipse individual identities. The film weaves in her own story, interviewing psychologists, music historians, and, poignantly, Sonny Bono's longtime collaborators, who reflect on the duo's chemistry and the eventual pressures that stifled Cher's solo ambitions. The documentary's balanced approach earned acclaim at major film festivals, heralding Cher not just as a subject, but as a curator of cultural memory. That Cher's personal life reflects the lessons she's learned. Though she has never remarried, she cultivates deep friendships and chosen family bonds that offer both support and creative synergy. Her son Chaz, now a proud advocate for LGBTQ+ rights, frequently appears alongside her at Pride events, their shared stage moments symbolizing intergenerational strength. In interviews, Cher credits Chaz's journey with deepening her empathy and sharpening her activism, reinforcing a cycle in which personal growth begets public impact. Perhaps most importantly, Cher has embraced the notion that growth can coexist with imperfection. She remains candid about missteps, public spats, ill-advised projects, regrets over missed opportunities for reconciliation with Sonny, underscoring that authenticity sometimes involves acknowledging our own flaws. This ethos bleeds into her social media presence, where she posts unedited photographs, shares candid reflections on aging, and responds to critical comments with humility and humor. The result is a portrait not of an untouchable legend, but of a woman rooted in reality. And that, more than any stage costume or chart-topping single, cements her legacy. As Cher approaches her 80th year, she describes the moment she finally named her divorce's real reason as one of her proudest achievements. Not because it rewrote headlines, but because it gave her permission to live and to age on her own terms. In her latest memoir, she writes, "I spent years wearing sequins to appear unbreakable, but true strength comes from showing the cracks." That line, now quoted across motivational posters and graduation speeches, speaks to the universal longing for self-actualization. It encapsulates why Cher's revelation resonates so profoundly. It is proof that even at life's zeniths, the bravest act can be turning towards the hardest truth. Standing on the brink of her 80th year, iconic Cher has done more than revisit pop culture. She's truly inserted an entire narrative of self-preservation where fans once saw only sequins and smile tracks. When she named the real reason she divorced Sonny Bono, she did more than correct half a century of speculation. She offered modern audiences a manifesto on preserving one's voice in the roar of expectation. That confession resonates because it mirrors the unspoken struggles of countless lives. Employees drained by office politics, spouses silenced by compromise, creatives muzzled by committee decisions. By owning her truth, Cher reminds us that genuine success, measured not in chart placements or awards but in the clarity of our own choices, can only rise once we let go of what constricts us. She modeled the audacity to choose self over status, proving that genuine freedom begins within. When we revisit golden age footage of the Sonny and Cher comedy hour now, knowing her hidden battle, the scripted smiles and coordinated outfits reveal a deeper story of tension beneath the glitter. The duo's on-screen synergy now carries the weight of creative compromise, an unspoken bargain where her bold ideas bowed to tested formulas. Behind the laugh tracks and witty banter lay unvoiced negotiations over song choices, costume designs, and photographic angles, every concession a crack in their shared stage armor. Yet that tension did more than fray at the seams. It illuminated the spark that drove Cher's relentless reinvention. Her revelation reshapes our nostalgia, honoring not just their harmonies, but the courage required to step away from an arrangement that masked her individuality. In rediscovering those episodes, we honor both the magic they made and the price she paid to reclaim her own voice. Cher's admission also speaks directly to anyone who has ever felt their creativity or identity compromised by circumstance. Maybe you've endured a job that stifles rather than inspires, or a partnership that asked more sacrifice than support. Cher's courage reminds you that the path to self-actualization often begins with discomfort. That personal liberation is seldom comfortable or convenient. When she placed pen to paper on her divorce decree, she embraced uncertainty and shattered expectations, choosing the possibility of her own voice over the safety of a shared script. Her journey offers a blueprint. Identify what constricts your spirit, muster the strength to remove it, and trust that your authentic expression will resonate. In a world that often rewards conformity, Cher's story is proof that true brilliance emerges when we honor the inner melody that others might fear to hear. Cher's revelation was far from a closing note. It set the stage for her boldest era yet. This fall, her Netflix documentary, Reclaiming the Voice, will premiere, promising intimate interviews and never-before-seen rehearsal footage that trace her fight for creative autonomy. She's also collaborating with top fashion designers on a limited-edition couture line inspired by the costumes she longed to create in her duo days, pieces that blend vintage allure with modern reinvention. And next month, Cher Cares opens applications for another round of creative grants, empowering artists determined to defy conventional molds. Each initiative reflects the lesson she learned, that revelation must be followed by transformation. By investing in new platforms, film, fashion, philanthropy, she expands her influence beyond the stage and into a movement celebrating authenticity across every craft. Her website now hosts an archive inviting fans to share their own stories of artistic emancipation. Now, what will you do with this insight into Cher's journey? Will you gather the courage to pitch that project you've shelved, seek the pay raise you deserve, or simply speak up in a room that's gotten too quiet? Her story reminds us that revelation alone means little without action. Until we turn awareness into a deliberate choice, our inner songs remain unheard. Share your own experiences in the comments. Describe a moment when you chose authenticity over convenience, or ask for advice on reclaiming your own voice. If this deep dive moved you, hit like, subscribe, and join community to ensure you never miss another story about triumph born from adversity. Watch interviews where we delve into another legendary creative breakpoint. Stay tuned for behind-the-scenes reveals from our upcoming profiles on another star whose turning point reshaped pop culture history.